I know in an ideal situation we'd be meeting face-to-face over at SPS, but we'll do the best through our Zoom today. I'd like to also give a special thanks to the Department of Business, Michael and his team, Ashley, Natalie, and Jeremy as well, for helping us put together this meeting today. Also, if you have any questions throughout, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom. And at the very end, our guest and Michael will be taking your questions. Last but not least, I wanted to welcome our special guest, Javier Meza from Coca Cola. He will be discussing marketing now and tomorrow, and also giving us other insights as far as the Coca Cola marketing philosophy and his own ideals of what to do next amidst today's new world. So without further ado, here's Javier Meza.
A privilege to be here and be able to share with you a couple of ideas. I prepare some slides. If you're okay, I'm going to go and share them with the audience. Probably take 20-30 minutes to drag you through that, and then happy to take questions and additional comments and also ideas. We are in a good need of ideas during this crisis. So Coca-Cola, what we have been doing this year, and especially after the crisis hit us. First of all, there's a couple of priorities that were very clearly established by our CEO, and it has been guiding us through this, which is priority number one has been to protect employee health and well-being. As you know, we are a global enterprise and we have people in every market globally, so this is really important for us. And connected to that is the ability to ensure safety and availability of our products. And that's important not only for the people that, like many of us, are in quarantine, but also for the workers on the front line. They also need the supply of products, and we are making sure that that's reaching them with safety and continuity. And the third point, of course, is supporting our communities. And we have been doing that also with a global scale. And to be honest, I'm not trying to say that this is exclusive of Coca-Cola. I've seen a lot of companies doing those three things: protecting employees, ensuring supply, and helping communities. But going into marketing, one of the things that, of course, we have been doing very diligently is trying to understand what's changing. And we have been tracking very dramatic shifts in consumers' behaviors and attitudes over the last weeks. This is just a summary. I'm going to take you through this. But what is interesting is, at least in my case, this is the first time that I read a slide about consumers, and I can say, yeah, I'm going through every one of those 5 things. There's a lot of restrictions in my life, in our lives. I am deeply concerned about health, personal, family, friends, community, and also about security. And we see that happening not only in the US, but in many markets, emerging markets, Latin American markets. Security is something that is the next wave of concern for people on top of health. Strain of spaces and relationships. Yes, we are adapting. We have been adapting. Consumers are adapting. Digital media are helping, but it's still not the same. We moved from having a life that was diverse to a life that is pretty much inside home. On the other side, a lot of acceleration. We see a lot of acceleration of online retail, e-commerce. But with limited availability, we ourselves, we make a decision to take our portfolio of products and narrow down to the top brands and top SKUs. And that's to make the supply chain more efficient during the crisis, and that's helping us. But also what you can already expect is, given the economic impact, we know that consumers are going to be reducing the basket and the repertoire inside the basket. And finally, this is also super important for us to remember is before the crisis, there was a lot of pressure on companies about climate change and sustainability related to waste and plastic. What we see happening today is society, stakeholders, opinion leaders asking not only about sustainability, but also about how are you in tangible ways helping during the crisis. So as a marketing person, this is something that, of course, we track and we need to understand, and we need to adjust our value proposition to this. But also something really important is to try to understand what is not changing. And I love this article. This is from this author, Bregman, 4 weeks back in UK. And basically what he says is, don't forget that during the crisis and disasters, some positive things emerge strong. And that's about people wanting to be showing solidarity, people being more kind, people showing resilience and hope. And this is important because when you manage a global brand in global markets and you are facing a global crisis, you need to be able to identify whether the things are part of the essence of the brands and essence of people. And that's what we did. And this is the one slide that we use to internally to explain how we see the Coca-Cola brand in people's life. And we said that the brand is about lifting the human spirit by leveraging specific values that are positive in people's lives: authenticity, inclusiveness, positivity, optimism. And when you see the history of the brand over the last 134 years, we have campaigns: It's the Real Thing, Hilltop, The Coke Side of Life, Open Happiness. Those campaigns are the ones that really work across these values. And in this crisis, it's not going to be different. We do believe that these values have a role to play in people's lives as we go through this pandemic. But what we have been doing also is trying to make sense of the chaos. And by understanding what's happening with the cases and how people are reacting to the information, we are using this as a guideline. It's not written on stone, but it's helping us to guide actions and decisions, which is we anticipate consumers to go through 3 phases of the crisis. Phase 1 is the shock, cases growing exponentially, and this is updated to April 9th, so it's probably 1-2 weeks delayed now. Markets like Latin America, US going through that phase. Then when the measurements taken by authorities start to work and you see the cases flattening, you go to a second phase, which is consumers calmer, but still concerned. And then we expect later something that we call the back to normal. And of course, normal is not the normal as we used to know it. There's going to be changes, and we will talk about that later in this deck. And we see a couple of markets reaching that point, China and South Korea, for example. We also anticipate that until we have a vaccine, people and markets might be going through stage 3 and 2 back and forth over the next months. So we need to be prepared to that. And based on this, we developed a strategy on how to move with the brand. And what we said is stage 1 is more about helping do more than say. And that has been the direction that we took. Stage 2 is about reassuring about today. And stage 3 is going to be inspired about the future. Stage 1, basically what we did is we went on a media blackout globally. And we announced that through social media at the end of March. We are expecting to be in media blackout until the end of April, so at least 1 month. And we made also the decision that part of the media that was not being used, we moved to help organizations, communities, health workers, and that's more than 100 million. We have not been very active in communicating this part of the decision. You can find that information if you go to coca-cola.com. You will see the detail, but that's the decision we made, and we are confident that was the right thing to do. As we move into stage 2, we are working already on plans for this inspiration about today. And then, of course, as you can imagine, a lot of my energy these days is about coming up with some decisions and strategies for the stage 3, which is, okay, how is going to be the new normal and what is going to be the role of the brand and the communications in that new normal. I wanted to share today with you some of the materials of this stage 2. So let me see in the next slide if I can play. Yes, this is a piece of communication. And of course, I'm sharing just a piece of communication. There is more than that in the actual implementation in the marketplace. That is going in China. As I mentioned before, China is closer to what we call a stage 3, going back to normal. So you will see that the tone and manner of the communication reflects that. I have here a version in English, but the version that is actually in the marketplace is just in Mandarin. And the music that we will be listening here is an iconic music in Mandarin that has been sung by the children choir in Wuhan. So there's a lot of iconicity around this piece of communication for the local Chinese people. Let me go and share with you the video. We started with this last weekend, and one of the reflections, the learnings I have on this is we need to remember when you have a brand like Coca-Cola that you speak not only to the consumers, of course you speak to the consumers, but on top of that, you also speak to customers, retailers, and employees. And it's interesting because there's been, as you can imagine, a lot of discussion about the tone and manner, the images, the music. And I've read, like probably many of you have read a lot of comparisons in social media about all the brands, what they're saying, what they're not saying. But at a certain moment in time, you need to stop reading all those comments and be true to yourself and what your brand is. And yes, this is not a type of communication that's going to work with every consumer, but with current Coca-Cola users, it works. And one of the things that we decided is we will speak first to our users. This is not the moment to think that we will be recruiting new users into the brand, but this is the moment to be emotionally together with the users, the customers you already have inside the brand. The next one is something that we are working for the international markets. It's a different approach. It's more proprietary, more iconic. And let me go and share with you now. So as you see, this is a message that is more about starting to worry about the future and giving a hint that, yes, crisis is difficult, but we will get through this together for the better. As I mentioned before, we are already working on the future, stage 3, how it's going to be the new normal. I don't have work to share today. That's exactly what we're doing. I had this morning a session with key markets globally, sharing ideas, pieces of creativity. But something that I wanted to share with you is these 4 ideas that how to think about the future. The first one is, as we know, this is a complex crisis. This is not something that we lived before. We have gone through many crises as a business, but we never went through a crisis that hits us globally for so long at the same time. So instead of thinking that there's a playbook that you can go and use and say, okay, let's go to the playbook about crisis and use it, you need to accept that there's no playbook, and that what you need to do is think about multiple scenarios and be prepared to manage those scenarios. And in order to do that, the most important thing is make sure that you integrate multiple divergent perspectives. So the more people you talk and the more people from different industries, sectors, brands, the better. Because you will need to be able to enrich your perspective instead of just trusting on how to manage the crisis, how you did manage the crisis in the past. Now, having said that, one of the things that give us confidence is when we go and see the big crisis of the 20th century, after every one of those, our business emerges stronger. And I'm going to talk about that in the last point, how to make that happen. The second and third point for me is really important for marketing people. One is, yes, of course, that attitudes and behaviors are changing fast. And we see that happening in front of us, and we see that happening in our lives. Some habits and technologies that were already there are being accelerated. The rate of adoption is increasing super fast. And then you will need to adjust. You will need to adjust your value proposition, because today value propositions are being redefined. The things that consumers wanted 2 months back versus what they want today is completely different. And you need to be able to adjust to that very fast. Having said that, there's also the human values. And as I have explained in our business, in our brand, in our marketing, we do believe a lot in anchoring the brands on human values. And as you know, human values are less volatile, they are deeper, they're more enduring. So we do believe that human values are going to be there. Yeah, the relative importance might change, might evolve, but that's not going to be able to be assessed until the end of the crisis. So to be honest, we're not trying to read how human values are going to change now. We will wait. That's something that probably we will be doing towards the third quarter, fourth quarter. In the meantime, we are, of course, adjusting fast to change our value proposition and to react to attitudes and behaviors. We have accelerated e-commerce. We have worked with HoReCa customers to change the portfolio of products. As you know, we sell a lot of products in the US, for example, through fountain machines. We had to go and work with them to provide solutions for delivery, for online commerce, and we have been doing that. But the next part of the work as a marketing for us is going to be to go and assess how, if those values are going to be changing, and be able to adapt our brands and our brand purpose on that. And then the last one is, of course, don't waste the crisis. And that applies to the business and that applies to yourselves. In the case of the business, you need to be prepared to emerge stronger. And that's what we are trying to do. And that goes from adjusting the way we work with customers, how we develop campaigns. We are much more integrated today than 3 months back, making decisions faster, working in a more agile way. And that's, crisis forces you to do that. When it comes about yourself, I want to share with you one slide that is how I have always managed my own career and trying to manage and help people working with me to manage their careers. Because we are saying, yeah, we need to emerge stronger. So one valid question is, what does it mean to be strong? What is strength? And I always like to think strength as a combination of 4 pillars. Number 1 is talents. Second is knowledge. Third one is experience. And the last one is attitude. Talents is what we are. And that's the type of things that we can take from one company to another, to one market to another. Is what makes us different, what makes us shine. And it's super important. It's very important that you know yourselves so you can identify what are your talents. Because most of the time, what companies and leaders do when they promote people, when I hire people or when I promote people, I give a lot of attention to what are the talents of this person. The second thing is knowledge. Knowledge, as you know, is very important. That's why you go to universities. That's why you go and do an MBA. That's why all of us keep learning, because knowledge evolves. It gets updated. And you as a professional, you need to keep studying and building knowledge. The third one is experience. And experience is something that, I like to say that it's very expensive to build, because in order to gain experience, you usually have to invest time and make some sacrifices. Throughout my career, I had the opportunity to work in Asia for a couple of years, and it was an amazing experience. So I learned a lot about marketing and marketing in Asia, but it was a sacrifice. You need to pack your house, move to Asia, learn a new culture, learn new ways of doing things, and it's time. But experience is very important. And then attitude. I have another slide on attitude, but before I go there, so think about this crisis. Think where you are today and what can you learn from this crisis. I am sure that it's going to be a combination of experience, because the things we're going through and the decisions we're having to make and the challenges we're facing are going to prepare us to face a lot of anything that comes in front in our future. So it's about experiences, and you need to be very positive about that. Of course, it's not easy. Of course, it's putting a lot of challenge on top of us, and we are working more hours, but we're gaining experience. And the next one is knowledge. Is some of the things I've been doing, as I had mentioned before, is because the crisis is so new, I've opened my circle of influence, and I am letting more people influence my thinking, and I am attending more forums and talking to more people and gaining new perspectives, not just people from the beverages industry, not just people from the Coca Cola Company, but from multiple industries. So in my case, that's what I'm putting: knowledge and experience. Attitude is important, and I know it's not easy during crisis to keep a positive attitude, but it's important. It's really important that we force ourselves to remain with what I call the protagonist mindset. And this is a small framework. If I think, if I need to think about people, they could be adaptable or creative in the meaning of proposing things, driving change. And you can be optimistic or pessimistic. During crisis, the most important thing is to remain in that quadrant of being optimistic and creative, proposing things, having what people call the protagonist mindset. And there's one reason why mindset is so important. And it's because, as you know, mindset is what's going to determine our expectations. If we start with a protagonist mindset and positive mindset, our expectations are going to be positive. And expectations determine actions, and actions determine results. So the reason I force myself to be on that protagonist, optimistic and proactive mindset is because that's going to help me drive ideas and solutions and propose things. And you can be assured that all businesses, Coca-Cola business or any business, they will need ideas and proposals in the years and in the quarters to come, because we will need to rebuild the business and rebuild employments and rebuild transactions and profits and opportunities. So that's it. I'm gonna pause here and open for comments, questions. Happy to take them.
Fantastic. Well, Paz, if you guys let me know if you can hear me okay. Javier, yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, thank you profoundly. It was absolutely wonderful that you share those insights and that you gave us really a nice glimpse inside of what's going on. We are probably all privately applauding your calm composure, because we know that your real day-to-day work must be extraordinarily challenging. And so, first of all, we want to thank you for your time, for joining us. For those who don't know me, I'm Michael Diamond, the Academic Director of Integrated Marketing and Communications, and had a good fortune to work with Javier in the Institute for Real Growth together, which I think where David and Javier met as well. So Javier, I actually want to start at a sort of completely different place, which is share a bit of your background with us. You have this wonderful, I think one of the reasons that you have this wonderful perspective on what's going on is that you yourself already have a very broad, geographic and,
yes.
Intellectual business experience. So just share a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, with the
yes.
students.
Thank you so much. And maybe I'm going to answer from two perspectives. One is my personal journey and a little bit my professional journey. Personal journey, I come from Latin America. I grew up in Latin America, and like many of us that grew up in emerging markets, you don't take things for granted in those countries, sadly so. And you have to be resourceful. And as I said before, crisis, I started hearing the word crisis when I was 6 years old. And crisis has been, the life of my country in Ecuador. But it's interesting because you get used to that, and you get used to, yes, crisis is part of life, is what happens, and you need to be ready to learn, adjust, and move on. As I said before, of course, this is nothing I went through in my past is comparable to this. But some of the traits that allow you to face crisis are there, and that helps a lot. And I've been 22 years now working with the Coca Cola Company. Before that, I worked for Warner Lambert for another 4 years. I am a chemical engineer myself, and then I did an MBA and became a marketing person. Out of those 22 years, I've been working in many geographies in Latin America, in North America, and in Asia Pacific. So I had the privilege of seeing a lot of different environments, competitors, customers, consumers, cultures. And that helps a lot, because when you need to face a crisis like this, and again, it's a global crisis and we are a global company managing global brands, you need to keep in perspective that balance between global consistency with local relevance. You cannot make the mistake of going 100% global, but you can also not make the mistake of going 100% local in this type of situations. Yeah.
Right. I guess that idea of how you inform yourself as well is a question that people have. Like, you must have every vendor and consultant and, analyst pounding you with stuff. So how do you personally navigate through that? What have you found to be axiomatic a bit, like how you inform yourself? And obviously you're intellectually curious, clearly, and broadly interested, but how do you do that? How would you advise us to think about the data and information that we're all getting?
Yeah, what I try to do is try to have a healthy balance between sources that I have already curated and I rely on, but I remain open to new sources of information and perspective. It's always, sometimes you can still be surprised by new perspectives. Yeah, it's true, since the crisis started, this has gone chaotic. I received at least 100 papers and invitations, and here's the next thing you need to do and know. So it's been a little bit challenging. But if in the past I would go 80% relying on known sources and 20% open to new, I'm more into 50-50 now, because I say, yeah, this is so difficult that maybe by opening a little bit my repertoire of sources of information and perspectives, it helps. I rely a lot also on people like you, Michael, that can recommend me things. I also follow trusted people that say, okay, this is something you need to do. I have a very good team of knowledge and insights people inside the organization that do a lot of that curation and the synthesis. As you know, in management, in leadership, there's always this tension with analyzing and then diversion and conversion. The most important things for me in the last weeks has been, okay, we need to converge and make decisions and move.
Right.
And that's something that we're doing. Yeah.
I'm interested. I'd stay on that insights question for a moment, if you wouldn't mind, which is, what are you hearing from consumers yourself, and are you actually, are you actually gathering any new insights in a sense? Do you feel there's some emerging, research or work you can do, qualitative, quantitative, ethnographic, during this period of time? And I'll caveat that with the question that, I've been in debates with CMOs and, marketing professors, etc. A lot of concern that, at this time, consumers are so confused, there's so much disruption that you almost have to discount anything at least anything they say, perhaps. So, how are you balancing that? Have you found any good insights? How are you looking for those insights yourself directly?
Yeah, so we are working with some of our partners on 3 fronts. This is interesting. Of course, the first one is what is changing now, today, and acting very fast on that. And that's basically related to, in most cases, to consumer behavior. But we're also trying to map already, and there's a group of people, global people from different markets, on how we expect to be the second half of the year in terms of attitudes, not only behavior, but also attitudes, what we expect. And we are mapping that and making, as I said before, scenarios, because it's very difficult to tell today this is going to happen. We need to play with scenarios. And within those scenarios, one of the scenarios we're playing is there will be some polarization. There will be some people emerging out of the crisis and quarantine, trying to go back to what life used to be. And there's going to be people that say, no, I'm going to change radically how life used to be. So the scenarios we're playing today is, there's going to be polarization. There's never been one consumer. Right. There's no one consumer. There's 7-8 billion people on Earth. There's no one consumer. But we expect some polarization. And then we have also some work happening on the next 10 years, which is more difficult. And it's very interesting. And this is a work that had started before. So it's not something that we start in the middle of the crisis, but we keep that work stream about, okay, how's going to be the next 10 years? And it's very interesting because, of course, you need to play scenarios like, what if we will have in the next 10 years, 2-3 of this pandemic crisis? How people are going to get used to it. One of the things I was telling to my colleagues this morning is, if you think how we are operating today, 6 weeks into quarantine, we feel much more comfortable than the first week of quarantine. Some of us are joking, hey, I don't want to go back to office. I want to keep working from home forever. But it's interesting that what I'm trying to say is human beings, we learn. We have the ability to learn and adjust. So if there is a new pandemic in 2 years from now, my bet would be by then we have learned a lot and things are going to be managed differently in a more positive way.
Just to stay on that theme for a moment, to indulge me, we often talk about these big generational shifts, the Vietnam War defined things, or the greatest generation. And there's this notion in sociology of Mannheim talks about the fundamental integrative attitudes of, cohorts of generation. Any sense that you think this is a big shift? Is it, is this like a moment in history, or, it depends on how long it lasts? So what do you think?
My bet would be yes. And maybe I'm saying that also because I have 3 teenagers at home, and I've been spending more time than ever with them, as you can imagine. and I can see that maybe it's not going to be evident for them now, but I can see them in 5 years from now looking back and saying, oh, that was the moment where some of our values and beliefs changed. I can see that happening.
Yeah. Well, then let's turn a little bit to sort of some of the nuts and bolts of what you probably do. Attitudes towards spending money. Yeah. And, some people we've seen pull out of marketing spend, and others like P&G, doubling down. Give us some flavor of that discussion, if you could, inside Coca-Cola, about, whether we should spend more and also where we should be spending our money.
Yeah, and as I said, when our CEO defined the 3 priorities, that's helping us a lot to guide how to move ahead. Remember I said protect health and safety of employees, and guarantee supply chain of products and safety of products, and help communities. And especially during these moments of stage 1 crisis, that's what we're doing. Yeah, we made a decision to go out of media globally. You might see the media here and there, but that's just because some of the contracts we have, you cannot just cancel overnight. But most of the media we stopped, and we made a decision to move that money to actual donations and helping people. And as we move forward, we will be very, I would say, thoughtful in how to use resources. As you can imagine, any business, we will be putting the marketing dollars behind the top priorities. So you can spend, we put in a higher percentage of our marketing investment behind Coca Cola brand, which is the flagship brand, the one that has a higher return on investments. But honestly, it's going to be fluid. This is going to be a fluid year. We will be reassessing the situation every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and making decisions.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the watchword. Talking to CMOs over the last couple of weeks, everyone's talking about adaptability and flexibility, and you know, some really good counsel not to rush to any point of view, because
and it's a good point, because one of the things we've been discussing is this is the moment to gain flexibility, even if you lose some efficiency.
Yeah,
so you need to make that trade-off of, you know, you cannot go and buy media for the next 6 months at a good price. You might need to buy media week by week and pay higher, but remain flexible. Yeah, that's
I think there's an interesting paradox though, and you've shared with us, you know, in other conversations, private conversations, that while there's this incredible flexibility that we appreciate, organizationally inside Coca-Cola, if anything, things became more centralized, you know, or at least, you know, decisions were getting made in a highly centralized way, which may not have happened in the past. So you talk a little bit about that, because you've had the benefit of both.
Yeah, and I would not use the word centralized, because it's really not, but it's more coordinated.
Coordinated, yeah, that's a word. Yeah.
I think that's a nice word to use, because and I see that happening. So we have developed the ability to, you know, the key players globally with players in Atlanta come together once a week. It's every Thursday morning, by the way. So it was this morning. And we have, you know, we know what we need to discuss and make decisions. Something that we are using a lot is disagree and commit, and that helps. Yep. So you need to be willing to disagree and commit and move. But coordination is the key word. And again, it's a global crisis. It's a global company. It's global brands. You have to be coordinated. There's
right.
no.
I'm writing disagree and commit down. I'm going to use that. I like that. So let's talk a bit about the brand as well. One of the, you know, we teach our students, and we discuss together as professionals this idea of, you know, not thinking about marketing as just campaigns, but, you know, there is some brand purpose or brand meaning or bigger brand ideal. Help us think that through. In the, you know, Coca-Cola maybe is blessed in the sense that it has a more strong, you know, definition as a brand than many others do. But how are you trying to also balance what feels too much like a campaign, and then what feels more, you know, central to the brand itself? And then we'll shift some questions a little bit to the channels and supermarkets and all those kind of things, because I know there's a big difference there.
Right. So let me answer in this way. First of all, we do have a purpose for the company and a purpose for the brand, and they are related, of course, but they are not exactly the same.
Right.
At the company level, we have a purpose that speaks about refreshing the world and making a positive difference. And again, when you see the priorities we put, which is protect people, protect supply, help communities, it's about that. And the decisions we made, it was not difficult to make a decision that stop media and move $100 million to help. It was not even a discussion. It was that's the right thing to do, and it's written in our purpose, and that's what we'll do. Now, the brand has a purpose, which is more on the values I mentioned before, which is uplifting people, inspiring people through values. It's more intangible purpose. It's more about the this optimism and inclusiveness and authenticity that the brand stands for. And what we realize is after a period, people, and especially Coca-Cola consumers, the people that drink Coca-Cola today, they are expecting their brand to speak in the way they used to speak. They are expecting people. Coca-Cola users wouldn't be expecting the brand to transform and suddenly start, stop talking about what we have been talking for 134 years. So in that sense, also was an easy decision. Yeah, we will speak from our voice, from our perspective, from our point of view. And to be honest, this is not an arrogant comment. This is, I promise you, it's not arrogant. I don't care too much if other brands are speaking about the same. That's okay. It's good. I mean, we human beings are in need of inspiration. If more brands are speaking like that, great. That's not the problem. This is not a moment to be thinking about, oh, I want to be the smartest marketing guy. I want to, win the next Cannes prize. I want to be recognized as a marketing. That's not about. This is about, let's help people. Phase one, tangible ways. Phase two, inspiration.
Do you think you would say that if you're running a small brand? That feels like the privilege you can say because you're a big brand and you've got, a huge, enormous inbuilt demand. But, and I know there are people on the call who are marketers at smaller brands or are entrepreneurs looking at introducing brands. What is this a time? Is this a time for innovation? Is this a time for differentiation, or is it too soon, as they would say?
I would say that there's a time for innovation in order to follow those changing attitudes and behaviors. So we had to innovate and change. We had to step up. We have. Let me give you one example. We have a digital platform in Argentina. It's called Wabi, W-A-B-I. It's a direct-to-consumer platform, and we've been developing that in Latin America for a couple of months now. Yeah, we made a quick decision of, this is an innovation that we will accelerate. It makes sense to serve customers and consumers in these moments. I saw last week a program, and it's already out there in South America, helping small mom and pops. The fragmented traditional trade is very important in those economies, not only for our business, but also for the economies. We are partnered with our biggest competitors in Latin America to put that program and helping those mom and pops to continue open and driving transactions and helping consumers, but also retailers. So this is time for innovation. Yes, if this innovation that's gonna solve the immediate needs, behaviors, changes of people. Time for more transformational innovation. I would wait and see how things are gonna move after the storm settles.
Right. Anything you're doing, obviously we know that the bottlers and the bottler community is so critical to you, and then obviously, the end consumer via the supermarkets. So a couple of questions built in. One is, you had explained in another conversation about how the world looks quite different to Coca-Cola, whether it's fountain sales or store sales, and it might be interesting to sort of chat through that. And the other question would be, are you digitizing the supply chain? Are people sort of accelerating efforts that maybe otherwise, wouldn't have got, as far along as they needed to be? So.
We have multiple formats in the road to market. We have the retail sales, multi-packs, but also we have the HoReCa channel where we sell through fountain machines and it's direct to the cup. With the HoReCa being hit globally with the quarantine, everywhere in quarantine, we had to do two things. One is make sure that we had in place the resources to serve the increased demand that is coming through online retail.
Right.
So we had to adjust that. And the second thing we did is working with those HoReCa customers and offer them packaged products, bottles and cans that they could use for their own delivery or pickup business that some of them are still running. I think some of that's going to be temporary. So I can imagine that once the economy starts to kick back and those HoReCa customers starts to open again, the fountain business is gonna be back. But I believe that the retail, online, e-commerce, that's something that's going to stay there. I think consumers are learning that it works. It works very well to do the online purchase of groceries, and that can be safe and be convenient. So that's something that we will continue investing in and partnering with players on that arena.
Excellent. There's a couple of questions about some campaign specific things, and I think a bunch of your friends here are folks who know you well. But there's a question about the Fadi Karamizan, who's we were very pleased to feature last week. We had a wonderful conversation with him. There is a question about the Taste of the Feeling campaign, and how you created that, and are you using it at all during the crisis to communicate with consumers?
No, we are not using Taste the Feeling. As we speak, we made a decision during this crisis to not use a tagline, and we are just signing with the Coca Cola brand. And honestly, it was a discussion. Okay, what's the right tagline? What is the right thing to say? And then we realized that consumers don't need the discussion about taglines at this moment. It's the brand signing the message, and that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Right. And then, a couple of questions too, I think more on the theme about, one question here about, how do you expect the new working modality to be post-crisis? So, I'm asking you again, perhaps to speculate a little bit about what you think might change and how you'll pick that up. It sounds like what you're saying is you have quite a lot of sort of sensing going out into the marketplace, and you were already working on these 10-year plans. Maybe I'll just ask you, do you see any of this as threatening? Do you think any fundamental shifts here? Or, are people, there's a movement obviously towards health and healthiness and does that hurt? Does it help? Obviously a very diverse business, but if we take some of the core brands, you see any of, or does that play out against this movement towards comfort and familiarity? I guess those are the tensions that we would explore, aren't they? Something that's familiar to us versus something that we feel is new and different.
Yeah, and let me say you that the marketing model we use in Coca-Cola, and I think many other companies do that, is we work through consumption occasions. Mm-hmm. There are different consumption occasions. So yes, we can anticipate some shifts. Something that we are already experimenting as we speak is with increased consumption at home, we are seeing a higher mix of zero sugar, and that's what I drink usually, right, without sugar. So it's interestingly, in all this stocking up that is happening and increased consumption at home, suddenly the mix of zero sugar products is growing fast. And our hypothesis is, as people are spending more time at home and doing less exercise, they are more conscious about calories and sugar, and they are choosing those type of brands. So that's something that, honestly, in our case, what I wanted to say is because we believe in this consumption occasion marketing model, we have a portfolio that addresses different consumption occasions and different consumer segments, and we have been investing in growing and expanding the portfolio. During the immediate crisis, we are focusing on a few brands and in package formats. But as soon as as we emerge of this, we still have a growing portfolio of brands and products and formats that includes more healthy options, other categories. So we believe that we will be in a very good position to emerge stronger when the big part of the crisis starts to fade out.
A couple of questions, Javier, about how you're working almost internally, agencies, etc. And then perhaps we'll take some questions that are more about careers and what students have on their mind. But so the question is really about how have you changed, if anything, your working practices with your own team? And you referenced some of that already, but what about agencies? And maybe you're not taking pitches, and it was a good time to put a pause on pitches. But how are you dealing with your creative teams, or how have you seen your agencies responding, more in terms of their working methods, and how they're working together?
And this is a good discussion to have, because of course and you can imagine we're going through a lot of discussions of everything, and I think that's good of crisis. It forces you to put everything for reconsideration. Everything is a what if, why not? But when it comes to agencies, I can tell you that, and especially thinking of the work that comes in stage 3 that I mentioned before, the best ideas I've seen are coming from agencies. So this idea that, oh, we can insource everything and maybe we can go and create our own ideas and we don't need agents anymore, I haven't seen that happening. You know, the most inspiring ideas I've been exposed to so far are coming from agencies. Now, those are agencies that usually know us very well, know the brand very well. So it's not, maybe what's happening as we speak is during the crisis, we're relying more on those agencies that have been with us more time and understand the brand and understand the really essence of the brand, rather than going and doing pitches of new agencies and open to new ideas. And I haven't thought about that. You're forcing me to think about that. Yeah, I've been very open to learn from many sources, but when it comes to generating the ideas, we're still working with a set of creative agencies that know us well.
I think it's just so. Well, I mean, there was a cartoon which was doing the rounds recently of this huge sort of big wrecking ball that said the word COVID on it, and inside the office block that everyone was in, where they were saying, "Oh, we can't go digital yet, and it's going to take us a while." And the point being, of course, that just this thing has accelerated so much, and it seems, I think some of the students and participants are interested in that working practice of agencies, and instead of schlepping all the way from Seattle to fly to Atlanta to make a pitch, do we really need to do that anymore? And so that, I think that was the background, some of the questions.
Yeah. And this is a good example. Let me give you an example of our own. I mentioned this on direct-to-consumer platform. It's really a B2B2C platform that we started developing in Latin America, and now it's going to be expanded globally. A couple of days back, the leader of that project calls me and saying, "Hey, I need your help. I need to scale this fast." And the problem I'm having is because they operate pretty much like in a startup. In every market I go, I end having conversations with different small boutique agencies, and it's impossible. I need to make this happen in 30 days. And so, yeah, that's why we rely on global partners. That's why you call some of those agencies that you have one conversation, then you can make it happen in 50 markets.
Right.
It's very interesting. So it's different when you need to manage a business with global scale.
Yeah.
That way you have to do this inside one country. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to turn to a couple of questions about careers and some counsel for our students. And what I would tell everyone who's been generous in writing in Q&A, what we'll probably do is summarize the ones we didn't get to, and if Javier has some time, we'll probably do this by email, and then we can get some additional answers out, because we'll have a hard stop at 6. I know Javier has a hard stop. We have students going to class and teachers teaching. So this is a question, Javier, I ask, I think, almost everybody who visits the School of Professional Studies, which is, what if when you hire young emerging professionals and are working with young emerging professionals, and they've come out of a good undergraduate or a graduate program like our master's program, there's probably something you say like, I wish they had taught them X, Y, and Z at university. Yeah, like, why don't they teach them X, Y, and Z at university? So what if you'd share with us if there are things you think that programs like ours ought to be teaching people, or things you just wish emerging young professionals know.
So let me go back and reference that framework that I used to manage my own career. The experience pillar for me is the talent and experience is the most important. And I'm not saying that knowledge is not important. I'm not suggesting that people stop going to do an MBA. That's important. But what really differentiates people is talent and experience. I wish when I was younger that I would have that clarity, that go and look for very diverse experiences. By the way, one of the reasons I've been in Coke for 22 years is because I change country every 2-3 years. I never spent in one country, same job, more than 3 years. So I was moving from one country to another. And now that gave me the access to a lot of experiences that were diverse and different, and forcing you to learn from zero. But invest on collecting experiences as much as you invest on collecting knowledge. That would be one of the things that I would encourage people a lot. So make career decisions based on the next experience you're going to put on your repertoire. That's one thing. The other thing is something that I learned during my years is there's a word that is super important in life and in business, which is ability to influence, influencing. Yeah? I was having a conversation last week with some people from the MBA in Costa Rica, and they were saying, yeah, some people tell that to work in a global job, in a global corporation, in global headquarters, you need to be good at politics. I said, no, you need to be good at influencing. And by that I mean is you need to have a broad repertoire of influencing tools. You need to know how to influence people in India, but it's not the same as influencing people in Japan or in Argentina or in the US. There are differences. So sometimes you use a style that is more about arguing. Sometimes you need to be more assertive. Sometimes you need to be more building alliances, building bridges. Sometimes you need to not discuss, and that's way of influencing. So this notion of mastering influence is something that I wish I had learned before in my life.
All right, I like that. That's very good. So we'll probably close up with some questions around very pragmatic things. We actually, from research, what we've seen, the Chief Research Officer of Wunderman Thompson, Mark Truss, is a faculty member of ours, and he's just done some interesting research on fear and anxiety, which they do every year. But the work there showed that today, what young people are most concerned about in this moment in time is about their career and their immediate future. Older people appear to be more worried about health and safety, etc., but younger people worried about their careers. So any counsel, sort of very practical counsel about what looking for a job might look like in the next 3 to 6 months, and even is Coca-Cola thinking differently about how it brings people in or how it trains people, and some real sort of like the advice you give to your older teenager family.
If I have to give three advices, one is keep your networks fluid. Of course, you need to be patient. Of course, a lot of businesses and companies are going into a wait and see mode for the next 3-6 months. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But don't let your networks get too frozen. Be present. It's going to be important. And once recovery starts, leaders are going to start looking for talent. So you need to be there in the consideration set. You need to be at top of mind. So that, I would say, that's number one. The second thing is make sure you learn something. Make sure that you can connect the crisis to some experience, to some learning. So when it comes to the moment of going and fighting for a job, you can show your ability to translate the problem, like this crisis, into this is why I learned. This is how I lived and went through this, and this is my positive story, showing this protagonism that I mentioned before, versus telling a story of victim of the crisis or victim of the change. That's not what we need. Companies and leaders are going to be looking for people with ideas and proposals. That's what we will need, all of us. After the crisis, we will be looking for talent that can bring ideas and proposals. Super important. So number one is keep your network alive. Number two is make sure that you learn and live this experience to the fullest, and you can tell a story about that. And number three is be resilient. It's not going to be easy, but it's not going to be easy for anyone. So be resilient. Life is a long, and careers is a long marathon. Don't get too much frustrated by the next 6 months. It's going to be horrible, but after that, the sun will shine again.
Well, that is an amazing and wonderful place to end, I think, Javier. This notion that the sun will shine again, and what you earlier said about, I think you were quoting Churchill, maybe you didn't know about, never let a good crisis go to waste. That was his famous line, never let a good crisis go to waste. So we thank you profoundly for your time and your insight and your wisdom, and we wish you really very much the very best at Coke. And I want to do a little quick personal thank you to David Bateri and to Ashley and Natalie, who've been sort of helping out in the background, and then to obviously all of our students. I love to just say stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you back in New York soon enough. So thank you from me, David. I don't know if you have any closing comments. You'll have to come off mute, but
no, just a quick wrap up. Thank you, Michael, for definitely helping out and hosting the event. And Javier, on behalf of the entire Integrated Marketing Association and all of NYU, honestly, the insights and knowledge you shared today are absolutely amazing. And I can't thank you enough. And we look forward to having you again in the future. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Copies of the presentation, this video will be posted. So for those who are asking, I didn't mention that. Again, thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, guys.